ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। दिवि भूमौ तथाकाशे बहिरन्तश्च मे विभुः यो विभात्यवभासात्मा तस्मै सर्वात्मने नमः। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। Page 154, Sattasamanya Prapti. That is the sub-chapter, that's the sub-heading that we are trying to deal with. And today's Satsang is on that. Before we go to the topic, let me just explain what is the model that Indian philosophy holds about the creation and how much that this particular idea contributes into that view. One thing is that Brahman is the one which is the basis of the whole creation, and the first modifications of Brahman is in the form of Satchitananda. Sat, existence, Chit is the mind stuff that is there, and then Ananda is the bliss, and that's what is the first level of this thing. And there the Ananda is, which is there, all pervasive, everything that is there which is in the form of Ananda, all pervasive, everything that is there in the form of Chit, and all pervasive, and there is nothing which is outside, is the way that it is the form of existence, Sat. Now this Sat, which is existence, which is there at the whole total level, then that becomes, what happens is that it is the existence of everything that is existing is what is called as Sat, becomes like a zillion or whatever that number, in an endless number. And then this Sat does not have any particular direction, any particular preference or anything like that. Therefore it is called as Samanya. So therefore what happens is the Sat becomes Sat Samanya, Satta Samanya Koti, and then Satta Samanya, and then whatever that becomes individual existence is supposed to be Sat. So therefore at an individual level that we have the Sat, existence, and we are existing as something or the other, and that's what is the way that we understand about the Sat. Basically, I can see that I am the body, or I am the mind, I am the intellect, I am something. This I am because I am existing. And this is what Descartes has said, that you cognize, so therefore you exist. But then what you cognize that exists, that's what he said. But then Indian philosophy says that you cognize, therefore you exist as a cognizer. So therefore this Sat Samanya, Sat is that which is we are familiar with as an object, as existing as something or the other. To be able to see that you come out of that, whatever that is there, I'm existing like, to come back, take one step behind to say that I am that existence behind all these things which are existing itself, is a very great step, inner step towards the spirituality. This itself is something which is very profound, very deep, very extraordinary. And this achievement of this is very, very important in the first place, so that what happens, this can happen only when you become a Sakshi. That means to say, you are observing whatever that is there. You are observing your own hands, you are observing your own feet, you are observing your own hunger, your own anger that you observe. And children are at that level where they will be able to observe themselves to be as an object. They observe that object. That's why they don't have this I born in them. They always say that Mintu is hungry or Mintu's stomach is hurting. Mintu wants to go. Mintu likes to see. So he can never identify himself with that Mintu. So it's just as an example, I'm saying that slowly what happens as a period of time, then he starts introducing the term called as I want to see. And this is what is the ego entering into a somebody. Before that, this ego that is there is pure, and since that it is not involved in the being this I, but it is something which is still wanting to do something that is there, and then and hooks onto one particular person, one particular individual. That's what is meant to. So this is how essentially that the into the world, journey into the world takes place. But before that, as an observer of this particular Mintu which I was talking about, before that we are Sattasamanya. That means to say it can be anything, it need not be Mintu. And this is what is Samanya. Samanya means basically it does not have any attributes whatsoever. It is just only that existence without any attributes. But then this is only the experience of an individual. In Samadhi, when people go into deep Samadhi states, sadhaka, then he first becomes an observer, and from observer he goes to a level where he doesn't even have any attributes and he is just there as an existence. This itself is something which is extraordinary, and this is what is Sattasamanya. But behind that, again, to be able to identify with the whole universe that is there, everybody in front of everything that is there in front of him is what is called as Sattasamanya Koti. And when we have that idea of Sattasamanya Koti, identification with the Sattasamanya Koti, then all these things that are objects that are there in front of a person, not like that the object is there in front of him, but only his own extension is that object, but he is somebody behind all those things that are there. So Sattasamanya, and then which now goes into the whole universe, and that's what is Sattasamanya Koti. And this is what is basically the idea of Satchitananda. So these different levels that are there, and not only that, when somebody reaches that state, persons who are around them, they also get pulled into this kind of a feeling. In the beginning, that when I become a Sakshi, it may not become so influential that others can become a Sakshi. I'm still like a Sakshi, and I'm not at least influenced by the others to leave this particular feeling because I'm established in that. But others may not get into that state of Sakshi, Sakshitva, because that it is still that Sakshi still belongs to only individual. And from that level, that I don't even become a Sakshi, but I become Sattasamanya. Now Sattasamanya will have a greater influence on the surroundings that is there. It is like the way that when the sun starts coming up, slowly the things are becoming brighter and brighter. Sun is not there, but only his light, his reflected light that is there something, and that is something which makes slowly that the sun is rising. The same way when you are walking towards a river, water source, and then as you are walking towards that, already that you get that smell of water, that fragrance of water, or that feeling that you are approaching the water, it must be somewhere around. So all that kind of thing that you get it because that its influence is there. Exactly this is the same thing that when water diviners that they find out that as they go closer to the source, they see that that water that is there in the ground is attracting the water that is there. The stick that they have in their hand, and that stick gets bent towards that. So it's a very subtle feeling that they can get it. Often people wonder, how did they find out that this is a place where the location, where the water is there? It is basically the subtle, the pull that the water that is there in the ground is expressing on the water that is inside. The stick that they are using it, the diviner uses a stick, and that's what is the way that you see. So that means basically that your attraction becomes like that to the people when you become that Satta Samanya. Satta Samanya is the case where you don't have any particular specifications. You are not having that kind of a boundary also, that is you or your kind of people and all that. Satta Samanya. And then Satta Samanya, then it goes to wider thing, and that's what is Satya Samanya Koti. And its space and time are no more barriers when you come to that level of Tatta Samanya Koti. And then after that, whatever that is there, Brahman, and that becomes like Sat. So Brahman is Satchitananda, and that Sat is the one which takes these particular forms. And these are step by step, the way that it just takes the form to become existence. So here the discussion goes on about the Satta Samanya or Satta Samanya Koti, because original Yoga Vasistha, there is a discussion about, it started with the Satta Samanya Koti. So I thought that before I go to the uh, Essence of Yoga Vasistha, the book that we have, I would like to go to the original Yoga Vasistha, Brihat Yoga Vasistha, where how the discussion takes place between Rama and Vasistha. It's very interesting, so that gives us a lead into this particular Satta Samanya Koti, Satta Samanya. So सत्तालयं याति यत्र निर्विकारं च तिष्ठति भुजो न वर्तते दुःखे तत्र लब्धवतः पुमान्. Where the object that you see becomes merged into Satta, that's what is Sattalayam Yati, and Nirvikaram cha tishtati, then it becomes established into Nirvikara. See, what happens is that we become that Sakara that is there becomes like Satta, that we exist as a Sakara. But then that even that you dissolve that Nirvikara, Sakara, so that it becomes Nirvikara, and that tishtati bhujo navartate dukkhe tatra labdhapo padapuram puman. And such a person who has become Atmasthiti of that Nirvikala Satta, Vikara Sattva to Nirvikara Sattva, and that he will not have the suffering of this world, or in other words, he will not come to the world for suffering. That means in this world that he will not have suffering at all. That's what Dukkho Tatra Labdhavat Navartate Dukkhe Tatra Labdhavata Man. The man does not enter into this world for the sake of dukkha, going through that dukkha. Taddetu sarvahetunam tasya hetur na vidyate samsaraha sarvasaranam tasmat saram na vidyate. And this particular state of satta and this atmasthiti is the cause for that whole taddetu sarvahetunam tasya hetur na vidyate. So this particular state of sarva is the cause for everything, all the causes that happen. This is the super cause for that. But then this itself does not have a cause. This itself cannot have a cause. So samsaram sarvasaranam tasmat saram avidyate. The Sara, the essence of the whole of creation that is there, and this is something which is the essence of all those essences of this, whatever that the world is created, and it is something which is behind that. So that means to say that the individualization has taken place when it becomes the existence of others, but here even that individualization itself is withdrawn, and from that state that you can come to the individualization. You being in this world, you being a witness of this particular thing, you being a person who is acting in this world, in this body, or in this existence, all that is there, but still you are now in touch with that aspect of it. which is the cause for the causes for all those things. See, often what we think of it is that we only have these three different levels. One is called as the gross, and the other is behind the gross that there is subtle. Like the way that the seed is there, inside the seed, the whole tree is there. But then the tree outside, when it manifests, it's in the gross form, tree. But then inside the seed, the gross form that is there has completely that is there in the subtle form. If it cannot be subtle form, it cannot be inside the seed. It has to be in a subtle form. Therefore, it can exist in the seed. And the whole form of the tree is existing inside the seed. The proof is that tomorrow, when you put the seed in the seed in the ambience, then the whole tree manifests, and the whole life starts in that particular tree. So that itself is a proof to show that there is one thing called as the subtle. So karana, that is cause, and the subtle that is there, sthula and sukshma that is there. But even that which has to have all that ingredient and all those things, what is that which made that sukshma possible there? And that's what is the karana. There is a causal effect which is making that particular thing. So that's what is the cause that we know. These are the three different levels that we see. In fact, in the modern science, that they think that the subtle itself is causal, but Indian philosophy is very clear about that, saying that the gross is there, and the gross replica or the gross essence, gross complete manifestation, unmanifest way it is available, is in the form of subtle. And that's what is sthula and then sukshma. But then behind the sukshma, there is what is called as cause, and that causal state, that's what is karana. Sthula, sukshma, karana, this is what normally people refer to. But he says that you go to that level, that taddetu sarva hetunam tas hetur na vidyati. The hetu means cause. So whatever that is the cause for the seed to have all that tree inside that embedded in the sukshma form, and that cause white form, because that there is some idea behind it to be able to manifest in the form of a creation. So that means to say there is something which is a cause for that particular cause. Such similar causes that are there, all those similar causes that are existing in this universe, and behind that there is what is that which is a cause for all those things, is what is called as tadhetuhu sarvahetunam tasheturna vidyate samsaraha sarvasaranam tasmacharam na vidyate. Now this is the sara for the whole samsara, whatever the saras that became essence, that became the samsara, and whatever that samsara, that means to say creative world that has taken place, what is the essence of that, what is the cause because of which it happened, and that is called as sarvasaranam tasmacharam na vidyate. It has got that particular sara, the cause. It does not have another cause for that. See, that means basically what he is talking about, that cause is swayambhu. It started by itself. It does not have any other thing that is there. That means to say wanting to become is its freedom. That's the freedom element, that is the mukti element that is there. That's why the real freedom, I've always been talking about this consciousness which is supposed to be freedom. The freedom has to have the most important ingredient of the freedom is to give up its freedom to become something which is of a lesser freedom. And that's what is Brahman. So he has a freedom, and he has a freedom to give up its freedom. Then the question comes that what is the reason why it's become? The moment that you think of a reason, and that is what is basically the way that again it becomes form of the cause and effect connection. There is no cause behind it. There is no cause behind it, and that there is no cause behind it is what is called as Leela. Leela is the word that in Sanskrit, in Indian philosophy, it is given that it is not something like a cause, but it is something where it is a causal. There is no cause behind it. Brahman became the creation, or the Satchit Ananda became Sat, because there is no cause side. It is just, it has a freedom that it will become a cause. So therefore, it does not have a cause behind it. Tasma charam na vidyate. There is no sara behind it. Sarve bhava ime tatra swadante sadhuvarithe shadrasa iva jihvayah prakatatvam prashantiye. So this chetana, sarve bhava ime tatra swadante sadhuvarithe. So it is that chetana which is there behind it, that consciousness which is there, which is making everything really pleasant, wonderful. It spreads that idea of blissfulness in that particular thing, and in the form of, like the way that various tastes are developed on the same tongue, and you feel the various tastes and enjoy various tastes like that, and it is from that total ananda city that is there in the form of various different types of ananda, it manifests. So, shadrasa iva jihvaya prakatatvam prayanti cha. It's a beautiful way that it is that ananda, that bliss that is there, Satchit Ananda, and that ananda has to be, is the way that it spreads in the form of various variety of things. Shadrasaha, like the way that 6 different tastes of the same object. Rama sarva pratyaye. So this is what Vasistha addresses Rama. Sarva prayatnena tasmin paramapavane pade sthiti upayasi tatha kuru tathan yatha kuru tathanaga. So sarva prayatnena, by all means, that tasmin sarva upavane, that means this is what is pavana, the very beautiful word. So very beautiful pavitra sthiti, and that upayat tatha kuru. So whatever that you do it, try to reach that particular goal. That means to say ultimately you are supposed to reach that goal and look for that. Don't stop in between. There is nothing like staying away from that. And this particular state that you need to reach, that should be the goal, Rama. And tad amalam ajaram tadatma tattvam tadavagata upashantimeti chetaha avagata vitataihi katascharupo bhava bhaya mukta padosi uchiraya. And this is the Atma Tattva, which does not have a Swayam, it's a Swayambhu, it does not have a cause behind it. There is nothing which is before that. And this Atma Swarupa is something which is pure. And this is what Tadamalam, that's what it says, that Tadamalam and Tadajaram. That means to say it does not have a birth from something else. It became like existence itself. And once you see that, and the chitta completely dissolved in that, so tadavagata upashantameti chetaha. Chitta is completely becomes silent. Upashanti. There's shanti, prashanti, upashanti. That means it reached that kind of a state. And once you reach that state, what really happens at that level, when you reach that state, he says the 2 things. Bhava bhaya muktaha. That means to say the fear. You do not have any fear. This is what in Taittiriya Upanishad says, that in all other stages that there is bhaya, there is fear. Bhishasmad vatapavate, bhisho deti suryaha, bhishasmad ignischa indrascha, mrityurdhavati panchamayiti. Taittiriya Upanishad talks about that, saying that why all these forces, the work that they do it? Because of fear. And Shankaracharya, while taking up that question, what's the fear? The sun rises in the east. What's the fear that rains? And what's the fear that the river flows? And Shankara gives a very beautiful answer, that saying that Atmanasharupam bhayam manyamanaha. That means to say they lose being what they are. That means to say they have now identified with what they are, that form and that activity, and that kind of a benefit that they get, they're attached to that, they become that. So therefore, this is what is bhava bhaya muktaha. You are free from that. Free from that because that you have no identification with any particular form, any particular shape, any particular idea, any particular thought. Absolutely, there is nothing. All those things are inferior. Like the way that this body identification that we have, then we have a fear of losing this body. If you do not have that identification with this body, or the body connected, all kinds of vasanas and all those things are gone, then where is the question of fear? Bhava bhaya muktaha padosi uchiraya. And that's what is the state that you reach. And this true Atma Swarupa is that which is supposed to be abhaya sthiti. See, bhaya is the fear, and we try to ensure to see that everything is taken care of, and that's what is called as nirbhaya. We try to ensure. But then what is the state that Atma Swarupa takes us to is the abhaya sthiti. Abhaya is that state where the fear is not there. That means to say, what can change? The change we don't want, and that's what is the fear. What can change? And it has a property to change. And then we don't want that change to happen. Therefore, that we are having that fear. But if we don't have something which does not change or changes or anything with it, absolutely we are far above all that kind of thing. Then where is the question of fear? Identify with that. And that's what is basically the idea of abhaya sthiti. And this is what he says, that at such a place that where you reach is the state of abhaya sthiti. Sri Rama Uvacha. Now Rama says that etani proktani tvaya bijani mapada katamasya prayogena shighram tat papyame padam. He says, hey sage, hey great sage, etani proktani tvaya bijani manasaha. So, samsara, whatever that samsara bija that you are saying, and then katamasya prayogena shighram tat prapyate padam. Please tell me immediately, please don't delay. Tell me in what way that I can reach that state, where that you are free from all this samsara bijatva. You might come out of this samsara that is there, but then samsara bijatva that's there behind it. And that you need to, causal aspect of it, that you come out of it. Subtle and causal. And that's where Vasistha says, Sattasamanya kotisthe Dradityera padeyati paurushena prayatnena balach samtyajya vasana. Now this vasana he talks about is not the vasana that we are referring to at a very ordinary local level. That I'm pulled by some object or the other, pulled by some idea or the other. I feel hurt when something is not there. These are all the simple local vasanas. But then this vasana, whatever that we have that, can extend up to that deep inner level. Sattasamanya kotiste dragityena padeyati paurushena prayatnena balat santyajya vasanam. Santyajya, with conscious effort, with conscious awareness, give up the vasanas even up to that level. Vasanas can follow us. Such a deeper level, inner level that vasana can follow us. It's up to us to see that how we work till that level. It's not just only at the superficial level. The superficial level that we work about our vasanas is the level where we want to convince others that, look, I don't have this habit, I don't have that habit. It's purely for the sake of cosmetic. It's only for the sake of impressing somebody else. Many times people do all kinds of things. They give up this, drinking this, give up drinking that. Or one kind of food or the other kind of food. Particularly they go to Kashi and then give up one fruit or the other. Symbolic. They're all very symbolic. But actually the vasana is there at that deep level. Sthitam baddhasya tattvajnaha, when you don't do it at that level, then this giving up at the, when you go to Kashi and giving up one fruit or one vegetable, something like that becomes like your ego. That becomes like another attachment to you. And you want, wherever you go, keep announcing that, no, I don't take this, I don't take this, I've given up this. So all these things are basically very cosmetic. It's for the sake of impressing the people outside. Wow, what a great what a great Sanyami he is, what a great Tapasvi he is, so he can do that. Give up all those things. Satta Samanya Kotisthe Dragityena Padeyati Paurushena Prayatnena Balat Santyajya Vasanam Stitam Badhasi Tatvagnya Kshanamavya Shayatmikam Kshanesminneva Tatsadhu Paramasadaya Smalam. So, even for a moment, when you reach that state, wakefully, and that state is something which is giving an indication that how you are one with the Brahman, one you are with the Atman. That moment is the one which gives you that inspiration. Consciously, wakefully for a moment, that can you be free from all that? Any kind of vasanas that they're deep inside, you are free from that. Vasana samparityage yadyatnam karoshicha tatte shitalatam yati sarvadhi vyathiyaha kshanat. Once you are vasana samparityage, by giving up, by coming out of all those vasanas, by not being influenced by all those vasanas, yatnam karoshicha, that means with the conscious effort that you come out of it. Tatte shidhalatangyati sarvavati vyathayaha kshanat. Moment that you have come out of it, with that everything dissolves. What are the things which dissolve? It says Adhi, Vyadhi, all those things will dissolve. Vyadhi is that what manifests at the body level. Adhi is that which is there deep inside. At this level, that your vasanas so go deep inside, your tendencies go deep inside. People call it as stress. Stress is a very limited term, but actually Adhi is a much deeper term that he talks about. Adi is that you have a tendency that is left within you, a tendency to become something, tendency to fall towards something, or a tendency to reject something. Very often, tendency to reject a lot of things will be there, and rather than tendency to fall. And once you have that, particularly Puritans, you can see that they keep seeing impurities. They keep seeing the impurities in the people, and they're constantly on the mission of correcting the others, advising the others. Good food, good this thing, good that thing, good all kinds of things that people doing. That means to say you have inside a value for that. You are working on that. It's really working with you. So therefore that tatte shidalatam janti sarvadhi vyathaya kshinat. That means kshanat. At that moment, adi vyathi. That means to say, adi vyathi are the things which are like the hurdles in the path of journey that you make. Your life is a journey like a river which is flowing freely. A river which is flowing freely. But then somewhere in between that there are some sticks, something which obstructs the flow, free flow. And that obstruction to the free flow creates turbulence. Or the obstruction creates a kind of a fight inside that, and that creates the temperature that rises the temperature. Or rumbling voice, noise. All those things. A river which is flowing smoothly does not make noise. It makes noise when there are always hurdles in between. There are always problems in between. And this is what is Adi Vyadhi. Adi Vyadhi are the way that you are being is making noise, is creating all that rumbling kind of a thing. When you don't have that smooth flow, you don't have any Adi Vyadhi because that you don't have any hurdles in between, impediments in between. And that impediments are in the form of vasana that you have. So once you give up all the vasanas, put completely, and then you are able to see that and apply to your personality, your being, then you can see that you can be free from Adi Vyadhi. Now he gives Vasistha gives three different important things. Tattvajnanam manonashaha vasanakshayevacha midihi karanatvam dussadhyani stita. So these are the three things. The first thing is Tattvajnana, that means the philosophy, the logic, the jnana, the understanding of it. This is what is jnana. And then second thing is manonasha, that means your mind becomes peaceful, mind is quiet, thought process is taken away, and then vasanakshaya, be giving up the vasanas or dissolving the vasanas, evacha. Midhihi jnanatam gatva. Then all these three things that they are working as a cause for one to the other. See, it's very nice to see that this way of analyzing these three things. One is called as that if you do not have the Tattvajnana, that means to say understanding, you have just only controlled the mind, but you have not understood. That means to say you have done the manonasha by sitting meditation, this and all that you have done. But at the same time that you don't have the Tattvajnana behind it. Or you also have Tattvajnana, but then you did not give up the Vasanakshaya. That means to say you are not given up Vasana. Then what happens is this Vasanakshaya will bring about all the other three things again. They give rise to all these things, and that's what happened. There are so many people, great people, done the tapasya, extraordinary tapasya. In fact, all our Puranas, when you look at it, all these demons, they have done the tapasya and they got the God's grace. But in spite of the fact that they have done the tapasya, they don't have vasanakshaya, they didn't give up, they don't have the tattvajnana. As a result of it, what happened was that it has become like a problem for them. Like Bhasmasura, a demon, who did the tapas. At the end of tapas, when God appeared to him, Shiva appeared to him, he said, okay, whoever on whose head I put my hand, and that person will be burnt into ashes. Shiva said, it's okay, you go ahead. And then he immediately said to Shiva, saying that, okay, let me do my experiment. Because you have given me that power, but I want to test it. Okay, you can test it. I'm sure about it. There's no need to test, but then you can do it. Then Bhasmasura says, okay, I'll keep my hand on your head. Want to test it. So he wanted to put his hand on the Shiva, and Shiva runs for life. But then his vasana is there. He wants to actually see it. Shiva is ended, then everything is his. At that point of time, then Mohini, a beautiful girl, comes in front of him. And he has a vasana. And the vasana is that he plays along with the tunes of Mohini, dances, and in the process of dance that he is imitating all her dance steps. And one place where he is completely lost in dancing, she keeps her own hand on her head. For her, Mohini, nothing happens because that she can put her hand on her head. But then when the same thing was repeated, imitated by Bhasmasura, he burns himself. So it shows that you bring about your own destruction if you do tapas, all right, but you did not work on the vasanakshaya, tattvajnana. Ravana is also another person that who did so much of tapasya, and he also had tattvajnana, so much of knowledge that he had. He was supposed to be a great pandita. But in spite of all those things that he could not conquer his vasana. And that vasana is the one which ultimately played a destructive role for him. And he was, because that he was tattvajnana, he thought that he was very wise. And that wisdom also acted like an ego for him. Therefore he said that I should not be killed by the demon, I should not be killed by the demons or the gods and demigods and this god and that god and all that. In fact, Brahma even suggested, what about human being? What about the animals, monkeys? Doesn't matter. Because anyway, that I can take care of it. Because they are in this world, and then I conquered the world, I can take care of all that in the world. Is it? Okay, tathastu. Even the hint did not work on him. Finally, a man and a monkey killed him. He got his this thing. So therefore, basically, Tattvajnana, Manonasha, Vasanakshaya. Very often what happens is that yoga students are interested in doing yoga, doing meditation, but they are not interested in these two things. One is the Vasanakshaya and the other is Chittanasha or the Tattvajnana. So therefore, once you do not take care of all these three things, what is the way that Tattvajnana works is that will help us is all that knowledge that you have can become your ego rather than dissolving your ego. That is where the problem comes. The problem comes. And somebody may not have any vasanas or anything like that. But then, and also he did the tapasya. Everything was there. But then he did not have Tattvajnana, which is supposed to dissolve his ego. On the other hand, Tattvajnana became his ego. And that's what is the story of Bali Chakravarti, where Vamana comes. That is said, after all, is a Brahmin little boy. What can I give him? And then Brahmin says, look, Brahmin, you cannot give anything. Brahmin doesn't want anything. All that he wants is a place, small little place where I can keep my foot. Give me that place. 3 feet where I can keep my 3 feet. Give me that place. So arrogant that he said, okay, you take it. And then he covered 1 foot. A very beautiful mythological way looking at it, Puranic way of looking at it. And that is a story value, where 1 foot that he covers the whole earth, another foot he covers the whole sky, heaven. And says, where can I put my 3rd foot? Bali says, keep the foot on my head. By that time he realized that his ego was there, which was playing. So, Tattvajnanam manonasho vasanakshayevacha mithik karanatvam gatva dusadhyan istitanyata. That's why this is very difficult to see that you get this state, because all these 3 things have to go on. Tasmad raghava yatnena paurushena vivekena bhogecham duratastyakva trayame tatsamashrayet. These are the 3 hints that Vasistha gives to Rama. Tasmat raghava yatnena, one thing is paurushena. This paurusha is very important. Paurusha is essentially that your paurusha is not just a power force, but it is the willpower. Vivekina, that means with the discrimination. And bhogecham duratasthyaktva. 3rd one is that thinking that getting the objects for the sake of enjoyment, keep it away, distance from that. So prayatnena, and what is that prayatna that you do? The prayatna can be in 3 different ways. One way that you do, one direction it is that paurushena, and 2nd direction is vivekina, and 3rd direction is bhogecham duratyakva trayame tatsamashrayet. When you do all these 3 things, for these 3 different aspects of it, one is called as Tattvajnanam, Manonasha, Vasanakshaya, then you go towards that Sattasamanya. From there to Sattasamanya Koti. It's a very beautiful scheme that Vasistha gives. Vasanakshaya Vijnana Manonasha Mahamate Samakalam Chirabhyasa Bhavanti Phaladamune. Hey Rama, that you are somebody who is you will get it because that you are really intelligent, and then you have the discrimination, all these 3 things, qualities that you say. You are also very disciplined, all these things are there, and you also think about it, mananashilata. So therefore that you have all these 3 things, therefore vasanakshaya vijnana manonasha mahamate samakalam, at the same time chirabhyasta bhavanti phaladamune. Try to do the practice so that you get the benefit out of it. This is something which is extraordinary, unique idea that he gives. Often we think of only that mind becoming quiet, You think that doing some discipline practices. But this clarity, with this clarity, giving the idea not just only the kind of becoming peaceful inside, but giving the insight in the idea of Sattasamanya. And it's not just only Sat, but it is Sattasamanya. It's not just existence, but it is existence of the whole. Existence without any of these pushes that are there is one. And from there, Sattasamanya Koti. So now let's come to what is that Laghu Yoga, the essence of Yoga Vasistha talks about it. Sattasamanya Praptihi Munireva Vinirniya Ardhen Militalochanaha Omityuchat Ucharate Tastha Pranayama Kramenacha. That sage, having thus decided, I thought of couple of sutras before that when we go, that Vasana Hinamapyetat Chakshuradindriyai Swataha Pravartate Bahiswarte Vasana Natra Karanam. The mind, even without, this is the 23rd sutra on the page 153, the mind which even without accumulated impressions are the vasanas, without vasanas, by itself proceeds on outwards through the eyes and other sensory organs among its objects. In its manner, accumulated mental impressions is not the cause. So vasana hinamapyetato chakshurad indriye swataha pravartate bahihi swarte vasana natra karanat. Vasanas need not be there. The mind can go into the object outside, interact with the object outside, and then come back. Because basically that the object outside and the sensory organ, they are connected. They are just connected, and then they just go only up to that action that they do. There is no need for the vasana. Tatindriyani murghani tvaktva antar vasana nijam sankalpavashat sankalpapadapam trishna latam trishnatam chitva manovanam vitatam bhumi masadya bahirapi yatha sukham. Therefore, having set aside the stupid sensory organ, having cut down the forest of mind with trees of thought, creepers of desire, along with its own inner mental impressions, and having reached the extended land, I go about at will, or as I please. That's where the sankalpa comes, and that's where the sanyama comes, or that's where the discipline of the we need what is called as the self-awareness comes into the picture. So satta samanya praptihi, the attainment of the identification with the being, identification with the existence. This is, we have identification of the existence of something, existence as something. From that, we don't have the idea of being mere existence. And that is what he brings about it. And this Satya Samanya, which he talks about, existence, mere existence, is very similar to the idea that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives Sthita Prajna. Look at these two ideas, very similar. What happens is that we have the prajna of everything that is there around us. When we sit for meditation also, that I have the prajna of somebody coming and what is the time it is, and then where I'm sitting. Or if phone rings, I know whose phone it is because I'm expecting something. So therefore, basically that we are having the awareness of something or the other. But whereas when he says that Sthita Prajna is a state where you are one with the Prajna itself. And a beautiful analogy for that is when you are looking at the object outside, that actually the sunlight is being reflected on the object, and that's what you are seeing. The sunlight is there and the object is there, and then on the object, the sunlight is being reflected, that you are seeing. Whereas the sun himself becomes a light. Sun throws his light. So rather than somebody who is watching the sunlight become the sun itself. So this is what is basically the idea of sthita prajna. Be established yourself in the prajna. Same and similar to the idea of jivan mukti. That's also another thing. Jivanam is going on. That means life is going on. All the activities are going on. But you are just doing the activities. As long as that you are doing this activity, you are here. It's like the way that the mirror reflecting an object that is there in front of it. Mirror has absolutely no attachment with the object, no preference for the object, no dialogue on the object. It just allows the object to be there. And this is what is the idea of sthita prajna, or the idea of jivan mukti. And this is similar to the idea what Mandukya Upanishad gives us, or what is the Patanjali gives us the idea of kaivalya, and the same as a Sattasamanya. And that is, what is that kaivalya? Kevala, that means to say everything else is there, but you are also there. Absolutely no connection with anything, no relationship with anything. Deep inside at psychological level, and then you are interacting with that. It's like the way that you go to the beach and then there are sand particles, and particles are there. That's all. No particle is connected with the other particles, but they're all just there like that. Each one is very absolutely totally independent. And like that, you are kevala, you are just being there. That's what is the idea of Sattasamanya. Deha sthitim drudam krutva nibadhye indriya pakvakam chintaya hridayam bhoje cheto bhramar chanchalam balat sanyodjamanasya setuhu jalamiva dhrutam saumyatam anayat mauni pranapana jalam mukhe. So before that, munireva minirniya harjon militalochanaha omityuchyata ucharatan yan tasthai pranayama kramenataha. So now he gives this simple experiment how you can reach that state. Is the way. So by chanting the sound of Om, by singing the idea of Om iti ucharatan ucharyan tastav pranayama kramena cha. These two things, one is the Om and the other is pranayama. Of all the practices of yoga techniques that are involved in that, the most important, most crucial practice of yoga, most engaging practice of yoga are these two things. One is the Om and the other is the pranayama. And these things are nothing connected with only, it's for the mankind. It's for the living being, and it is connected with that. And these two things are very important to give us the idea of that. You are in the state of living, you are in the state of being, and that experience that you need to get. See, that's what is idea of Sattasamanya. Is the idea is that existence, mere being as an is an existence. That's what is the idea. And in what way it gives? Om takes you to that state. The practice of Om, understanding of the Om, living that Om takes you to that state. What is the way? Several times that we have explained earlier, but in short, that I can explain again this idea. Om comes from the dialoguing mind. Om comes from the verbal thing that we have. And verbal is the way that we communicate, we relate with the world outside. Every relationship, every connection in the world outside is with the help of verbal thing. As I said, gave the example of the sand and the beach where no particle is connected with the other particle. And what connects with one individual to the other individual is this particular sound. And all the sounds, the dialogue that takes place may not connect with outside, but I create a picture of that person, that thing in my mind, and then I connect with that. And many times that we have inner dialogue going on, but for some people that it becomes so strong that the dialogue goes on loud outside. But whatever it is, the dialoguing is the one which is the problem with us. It may be loud, that means audible dialogue, and the second thing is inaudible dialogue. And one that connects between the audible and inaudible is one sound called Om. That's a very beautiful thing. And every dialogue, the beginning sound is A and the end sound is M. All the other syllables in the dialogue are the articulation of your vocal cord in between these A and M, whether it is visibly or invisibly, whether it is expressively or impressively. Both these things are inside. Both these things are the way that the dialogue that you interact with. Any dialogue that you see is the way that you connect with the world outside. It's only to connect you with the world outside. And these two edges, these two banks of this dialogue that goes on, A and M, namely, bridge these two with the middle sound U, and that's what is the sound Om. So Om is not just only a sound, but it's a structural facility which can really connect with all the dialogues, whichever language that is there, whichever way it is there, expressive or impressive. Every dialogue falls within that Om, it envelops everything. But then when the moment that you say Om, it envelops all the dialogues and then it itself dissolves, because Om has no personal interest with you, nothing to do with you, no connection whatsoever. So therefore, it dissolves. It removes every other dialogue and then it also dissolves, leaving the mind to silence. Or mind itself is a dialogue, then it transcends your mind. You go to the state of amani sthiti, mind not being there. You transcend the mind. The moment that you transcend the mind, what is left with is that you are one with the consciousness. So therefore, Patanjali said it, Upanishads talk about it. All the Upanishads talk about Om, and Bhagavad Gita gives eloquently about Om. Yoga Vasistha also talks about this Om as the one, because the dialoguing is the way that you are creating the world outside, vasanas or samskaras and all that. And the moment that you go to that silence, that's a state where you are freeing yourself from the vasanas and samskaras. You are beyond that. That is the consciousness, what we call it as, that you have mere consciousness, or you are Sat. You are one with the Sat without any impressions of whatsoever. So therefore, Om takes you to that. That's why he suggests about Omitityu Utya Acharan Tasthaihi Pranayama Kramena Cha. Second thing is Pranayama. Pranayama has these two components, or actually four components that are there in pranayama, or in the breath. One is inspiration, inhalation. It's in a forceful, active state. And that inhalation actually sustains you, survives you, and you exist because of that. And then retention, that's there inside. And then you exhale. Exhale is a passive activity. And then after exhalation, what is the fourth state, which is supposed to be where exhalation is complete, inhalation is not started, you are not holding anything within you. You are free from that. It's a state of death. At the death also the same thing happens. That means you do not exist. Or the prana does not exist. You transcend the prana. Once you transcend the prana, that space, that silence, that quietude that you reach is the state of Atma. So these two practices, properly practiced, will take you to that Atma Sthiti. Being keeps you in touch with that. Deha Sthitim Dhrudva Krutva Nipadhye Indriya Panchakam Chintaya Hridayam Bhoje Cheto Brahmara Chanchalam Balat Samrodhaya Masa Setuhu Jalamiva Dhrutam Saumyatam Anayad Mauni Pranayam Ajayam Mukhe. Having made this position of this body firm and controlling the five sense organs, he forcefully stops, or he arrests, not forcefully stops the mind. Mind gets dissolved, and filtering like a black bee, which is going like a black bee in the lotus of the heart by reflection. Even as a dam arrests the flow of the water quickly, the silent sage brought the spread of the outgoing and incoming breaths and the nostril, the state of gentleness. That's what he gives the explanation here. Only thing is that I don't agree with the idea called as the forcefully getting into that state. In both the cases that you are poised to get into that state, you achieve that state, you are placed in that state. Once you reach that, once you establish yourself in that, then you can say Indriyani Indriyarthebhyah Prathak Chakre Prayatnatah Bahyan Sparshan Asheshena Jahau Durena Dhirathi. He who is firmly resolved, he understands that serve the sensory organs from the object of the senses with great effect, severes the sensory object from the organs from the ears, and the cast of far away external context completely. Everything is outside, and then you are freed from all that. Babhara Hritayakashe Manaha Samyamamagatam Dudhavatha Vikalpoghat Pratibhasam Upesha. He bore experienced in the space of the heart the mind that has obtained concentration, control, while he threw off the multitude of doubts which has come into appearance. So what happens when it is the heart which does not engage in repetition or in going over and over again, and the head which goes that. Head goes on repeating, head goes on thinking about that. Therefore, basically, when you are established at the level of heart is something where you just stay. You don't act. You don't act. You are not doing something, but you are just state of being. And that Hridaya Kashe, Babhara Hridaya Kashe, Manaha Samyamama. When the mind is Samyama, that means to say, when the mind is dissolved, then naturally what happens is that you are established yourself in the heart. Agacchato yatha kamam pratibhasat punaha punaha achinat manasa shuram change naiva khande naiva rane drupa. That brave one cut off with his mind again and again and appears. Agacchato yatha kamam pratibhasat punaha punaha. Again and again the thoughts come, appears in the perception that is coming at will, cut off enemies from the sword in battle. Shuraha khadgenai varanirpal. Ripun. You know, the mind which is being running around, taking the senses, taking your self toward the object, toward the thought, towards the ideas that are there. And that you cut it off. You see where it is? So that what happens is when that happens, that quietude that you get is a state where Vikalpeya tatha lone drishta jnanam rudantare tadapyucheda mayasa samyak swantar vivasvata. When the multitude of doubts are destroyed, having perceived ignorance within his heart, he eradicated completely even that with the sun of knowledge within his own self. This is what I read from the Brihat Yoga Vasistha, where he says that we need to have all these three things. One is called as the Manonasha, and second thing is Vasanakshaya, and third is the Atmajnana or the Tattvajnana, that we need to have that. So once we have that Tattvajnana, and then multitude of doubts, vikalpante yatha tune, drishta jnanam hridantare. That means the doubts are destroyed with the help of Tattvajnana, and then having perceived ignorance within his heart, and then he eradicated completely even that with the knowledge within his own self. Gate tamasi chajnane tejaha punjam dadarshatu tejasyapi tato lune nidram prapya lular lulavatam. When the darkness of ignorance was gone, he saw a mass of luster. When even the luster was cut off, having obtained sleep, he again annihilated that sleep. The idea is very similar to the idea that is given in the Mandukya Upanishad, where it says that laye sambodhaye chittam vikshiptam shamayet punaha. Exactly the same idea that it brings about. You cut off the laya, and that's what is basically nidra. Nidrayam cha nirasthayam. When the darkness of ignorance is gone, gate tamasi cha ajnane tejaha punjam tadarshasa. Ajnana has been cut off, but then there is a brightness that comes up, teja punjam tadarshasa, and tejasyapi tato lunam nidra prapya layatam. Even that you cut off. Nidraya cha nirasthayam shunya samvit samudyame shunya samvit Nashthayam mudham tasma bhavat manaha. Mind becomes confounded when sleep is cast off. The laye sambodhaye chittam. We need to see that you wake up. But then the moment that you wake up, what happens is that as habituated, that it goes into vikshepa. Vikshiptam shamayet. By calming down the vikshepa, that's where that you conquer that. This way that you try to create a balance consciously with awareness, knowing fully well that you are not going running behind the vasanas, because whether it is vikshepa or whether it is tamas that goes on, laya, that tamas it goes on, both the things are nothing but the representation of your vasanas. So when the vasanas, you don't want to give yourself to the vasanas, then you cut off from that and then cut off yourself going into excitement. When these things happen, nidrayacha nirasthayam, it's a very beautiful word. Nirastha, that means to say sleep, you make it as powerless. It doesn't unnecessarily engulf you. Try to see that you are not loaded by the sleep, which means basically tamas. You are not drawn by the tamas, you are not drawn by the rajas, you are not even drawn by the sattva, but then you stay between these three states, gunathita. Manaso mohamapyethaha sammamarjas mahashaya tataha tejas tamo nidraha mohati parivarjitam kamapyavastham asadhyah vishashrama manakshanam. The high-souled one completely wiped off even this delusion. No more delusion. Then having reached a certain state, deprived of the luster, darkness, sleep, delusion, and the like, the mind took rest for a moment. So, tejaha, tamaha, nidra, moha, all these things, adi, parivarjitam. These are all various modifications. Modifications on one side, modifications on the other side. Modifications towards nidra, modifications towards being overactive, modifications towards being analytical, modifications towards being non-analytical, just being dull. All these modifications that mind can undergo. It looks like that you are preferring one or the other. No. Free yourself from all the preferences, because there is no preference. You are yourself as somebody who is there in that state. Oh. Manaso moha. Moha is the infatuation, the delusion. And what is that? Sammamarjam mahashaya, a mahashaya, that means the great high-souled one completely. And then having reached a certain state, deprived. Tataha, in that state, for that state, tejaha, tamaha, nidra, moha, viparivarjitam. All those things are just given up. kamapyavastham asadya visham vishashrama manaha kshanam. Mind becomes quiet. See, that means basically mind is all these things. Where is the question of mind when there is no tamas? Where is the question of mind when there is no restlessness? Where is the question of mind? And preferences, non-preferences, all those things are there. When all these things are dropped, that means to say mind is dropped for a moment. When that moment when the mind is gone into the rest, Vishram Yashu Papata Swasamchidam Vishwarupidam Chiranusandhanam Vashat Swadanacha Swasamvit Manaha Chenmayatam Agat Heman Nupuratam Tamiva. Having reposed the mind, alighted quickly, directly onto its own consciousness, which is the nature of universe. That's what is Sattasamanya. By the power of long investigation, reflection, and the tasting of its own consciousness, the mind attains to the state, insisting pure intelligence, consciousness, just as the gold attains the state of an anklet. Chittatvam ata santyajya chittam chittatvam chittattvatam gatam chetya sanchitya chit shuddha chittas chinma chit samanyam samayi tyakta vichit bedobhi vasamamimam ivaikathi. Then having given up the nature of the mind, chittatvam, to say beautiful word, chitta is the area where you are doing all kinds of activities of memorizing, intellecting, etc., analyzing all those things. This is what is the chitta activity. So this chitta activity, what makes that chitta activity that is there, or that is the position that has taken by the Atma, that's what is chittatvam. Chitta activity, mind has, the consciousness has taken up. That chittatvam ata santyajya, that you give up. Chittam vichittavan gatam. Chittatvatam gatam. Chittam chittatvatam gatam. All that chittatva, whatever that's happening in the form of chitta, it's all given up. It's all gone. That means to say all the vasanas are also gone. All the samskaras are also gone. And chetya sanchidya chit shuddhya chit samanyam samayayo tyakta vi chit bhedobdhihi. Having abandoned the objects to be cognized, purified intelligence attains identity with the pure consciousness. Just as the ocean which is abandoned. Now all the modifications of the chitta, like the way that all the waves, all the changes that are happening on the top of the ocean, imagine for a moment that all those things are removed. Then what happens? Then it is no more a ocean, just water. It's just water that is there. So water is the original, and then all those modifications are the one which makes the ocean, the waves, and all those things that are there. Once you give up all those things, then it's the ocean, or the waves, and the force that is there. All those things now no more exist in the form of what they are, but it becomes just water. This is what our thoughts, our ideas, our analysis, our modification that we have, language that we have, everything is dissolved itself into one thing. And that's what is basically the chitta. And here he comes with that idea, the chidakasham tataha shuddham so bhavan bodhamagataha tatra prapan athanandam drishya darshana varjitat chitta samanya rupatma babhuvananda sagaraha. This is where the idea of chitta samanyata he brings about. We have these different akashas that we have seen. One is called as the akasha that you see, and the other is akasha that we have in the form of where that in the house that we have, That the space that we have, that we think of, we create a space. We have some area and with which that we create that there is a space. We call it, as in English, we have such a beautiful term called as a room. Room means actually space. But then what is that space? That you created a structure and then you provide a space inside that. That's what is room. Whereas another akasha is there. That's what is in the world outside. These are the things. But then the third akasha is there, which is called as chidakasham. Like the way that anything that goes into the external akasha will remain pure. The clouds may be there hanging for a while, or the object may be there somewhere in the akasha for a while. All those things are imposed, but then their imposition is not going to change the akasha. Akasha remains as the same. The same way that in the room that you created, that you keep all the things that are there in the room, akasha is not gone. The moment that you take away all the objects, the roominess is always there. It is still there. So therefore, the same way that even the chidakasha also, that all the thoughts, all the ideas, vasanas, all those things you might have had, but then it did not remove that chidakasha. It's always pure. Chidakasham tatha shuddham saubhavan bodhamagataha. That means you try to understand, you now come in direct contact with bodha and consciousness of it, and then tatra prapat adhyanandaha drishya darshana varjitam satta samanya rupatma babhuvananda sagaraha. This is where basically the idea of Sat Chitananda, the Sat being mere existence, in the way that we make this Chit Akasha, which is supposed to be pure, where this Drishya Darshana, the dialogue, object and objectification and the process of connection, these things are not happening. Like the way that, as I said, that the two pebbles, two grains of sand in the beach, they are not connected. They are there. One grain is there, another grain is there, third grain is there. Like that, we are all there. Like that, all these things are there. You just only see them as very objective. You perceive them as an objective. That way, when you are there, then you are in the state of Ananda directly. So, Satchitananda, all these three things are established. So, therefore, Sattasamanya is the one which invites Ananda. It is the one which you can reach by the Chittakasha, Chida and Chidakasham. That means to say, the inside the Akasha that is there in the Chitta. That's what we, and this is what is Jivan Mukti, Jivan Mukta Padam. As I said earlier, these are the three things that are there, or the four things. One is the Kevalya, and the other thing is Tasthita Prajna, or third is called as Jivan Mukta Padam, and the fourth one is the expression of that is idea called as Sattasamanya. We'll stop it here. Let's try to ruminate on these ideas, go through these ideas. The whole of Yoga Vasistha is nothing but these ideas, trying to live, trying to ruminate on those ideas, especially the idea that, as he said about the Om, he said about the Pranayama, these two things. Let us take it to this idea of Chitta, idea of that Satta Samanya level, that you take these two things. Then you are really practicing a spiritual practice of pranayama, spiritual practice of Omkara. Namaste. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.